we started going to the Anglican Church in I think 2010 or 2011. And when we first started going, there's this book. It's called the Book of Alternative Services.
Yeah.
And we use it all the time. Well, where's the main book?
Yes.
Right? Because if there's going to be an alternative, there's going to be like
where's the other one?
Main one?
Yeah.
That sometimes you deviate from.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably, maybe it was the overt intention at the time it was written, that this is going to be something that, we're going to use the Book of Common Prayer. That's going to be the main one. But when we want to kind of mix it up, or when we're dealing with something that's not really well addressed in the Book of Common Prayer, we can go to this other resource to provide another resource to actually fill in this blank. But I think, what's happened in practically, at least today, is that's where we get our service from.
It is, yeah.
And it shares many elements of the Eucharist or morning prayer or whatever it is, services in the Book of Common Prayer, but has more modern English.
Yep. That's the big thing.
That's the big thing. And provides some more options for whether it's prayers of the people or the creeds, what have you.
And it opens up a greater welcome to receive the Eucharist. The Book of Common Prayer, you had to be baptized and confirmed to receive, and you had to, the rubric was right there. The priest had to announce, they didn't do it every week, and the priest had to announce that it was going to happen, and you had to analyze your life and reconcile with your neighbor, make sure all your relationships are good before you're received. So, we don't ignore that. We just include the piece, and we just say, in a sense, we're saying, which I think catches more of a historic thing, we don't earn the right to come to communion. We don't earn the right.
Right.
It's a free gift. And so I think there was a bit of a push to correct that, to kind of say, no, it's not something we earn. It's free.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure there were many people who viewed that as an erosion of standards.
Yes.
Right? That this is the standard that we have received from time immemorial, so to speak. And when we don't go through that process and we're not strict about certain standards, that just is a loosening and is a symptom of some sort of illness. I think sometimes. And I appreciate that perspective, because I think there are times for standards and for, there's a reason why we do certain things. And you shouldn't get into something or be able to do something just because you want to. That's not how I parent.
Right.
That's not how I, right. That's not a functional way to live your life in most ways. But I think there's a certain wisdom on the flip side of, like you said, we don't take Eucharist because we did something to make it so that we deserve it.
Exactly.
It's an act of grace.
Yes.
We're invited in, warts and all, to be able to engage in that. And there's some things that you should probably be doing before you take part in Eucharist, because it's a very significant event, but it's a fairly low bar.
Yeah. And I think, so in one sense, I think that was a right correction to things. People that want to think, liturgical churches are legalistic. We've gone through legalistic periods. We try to correct that. There are other churches that wouldn't be labeled liturgical, but are very legalistic in other ways, right? The Southern Baptists are currently arguing about whether they'll endorse the creed. And people are going, if you can't endorse the creed, you're outside the faith.
There's a few threads that are very common throughout the whole thing.
Well, I don't like the wording. Well, anyway.
When we do like our Eucharistic service, some parts of it, the way that we do it at St. Matthew's, some parts of it are sung. Like some portions of the prefaces to the Eucharistic prayer. We sing the Lord's Prayer. can the whole thing be sung?
It can.
That's probably pretty uncommon.
It's uncommon because, the priest needs a decent voice to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and we used to do it when Alan was here, and that was actually one of the really unique and really cool things that drew me in very instantly. It was like, I have never heard this kind of thing happen before. Yeah. And it made it a lot more real and impactful.
Yeah.
Because it was, I don't know, because it's sung, it has a different cadence and a rhythm to it, and it just hits you differently.
Yeah.
Well, and the Psalms were sung.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the hymn book of the Hebrew people, and then the time of Jesus. I mean, that's how they knew them all, because it's the same as us, right? You hear a few notes of a song that you're familiar with, well, you can do the whole thing. But if you had to memorize it, it'd be struggle, right? Well, they sung everything, so.
Well, especially like you said before, the printing press, if you were doing a similar sort of liturgy and people had to remember it, it was very functional to sing it.
Sing it.
Because illiterate, I don't mean that pejoratively.
No. Yes, but
illiterate people can still remember songs.
Yes, exactly.
And because it's kind of built into us.
Built right, yeah.
And so you can create, you can help people remember the 10 Commandments, and you can help people remember these rubrics for living.
Yes.
When otherwise it'd be very difficult to do so.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's part of the reason why, though we don't use the Book of Common Prayer, there's still so many aspects of it that kind of still pop up in certain ways. And like the way I learned the Lord's Prayer as a young kid is probably, I would imagine, it's like the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. All this kind of what we would call archaic language now, but I've never forgotten that particular way of saying the prayer, because it's just so memorable because of the way the language is, and the cadence of how the prayer goes. And I think, even as a young adult, the way I was introduced to the Book of Common Prayer long before I ever became an Anglican or attended anywhere that it was an Anglican church, was this is a piece of literature, like a valuable piece of literature, because there's so much in our modern English language now that the phrases and ways of saying things and idioms that come from that. And so studying English in university, that's kind of how I kind of started to learn a little bit about it. And I like how it still kind of has this influence, though we don't always recognize it or know.
Yeah, and it was created for oral communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
not to sit down, not to read like a regular book.
Yeah.
It was carefully constructed to be done orally, so people would listen to it.
Yeah.